you. منحب نهدي هالعرض لروح كمال بلاطة الفنان الفلسطيني العظيم اللي فرقنا السنة واللي لحظه السعيد بعد 50 سنة من عدم السماح له لرجوع لفلسطين حالياً هو مدفون بالقدس. We would like to dedicate this performance to the beautiful soul of Kamal Bullata, a brilliant Palestinian artist who passed away this month of August and who happily, after 50 years of exile, resides now in Palestine, in Jerusalem, where he's buried. Thank you.
Thank you. This was Nadine Touma from Dar Umbuz. From Dar Umbuz. Music, Sama was, had their book, music by Sivin Aris. On the piano, we had Melissa Khairallah, and on guitar, Bahij Jarudi. Please, thank you.
Just a very quick thank you. Yo-Yo, you're teaching the whole world a beautiful lesson of love, humility, and the importance of culture. And I hope a lot of people here will take on your beautiful, beautiful steps. Thank you for this beautiful opportunity.
Thank you all for coming this hot, humid evening to share with us what I think would be a magical night. We've been working tirelessly and sleeplessly for the past few days because it's not every day that we have a great humanist like Yo-Yo Ma and a great conversation about culture and freedom of expression in the Assembly Hall of the American University of Beirut. We are here to be connected. والفضل للي جمعنا مثل ما بيقول زياد الرحباني يو-يو ما. Culture connects us is the hashtag of the BACH project in Lebanon. I think the culture that connects us, we are very, very fortunate to be at the American University of Beirut because we are in a place that breeds culture and freedom of expression to the end. I invite Dr. Khouri for his welcome speech.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends and distinguished guests. Okay. Note to self, never succeed Nadine Touma or precede Yo-Yo Ma, so I'm going to try to make this quick. I want to welcome you all to this very special gathering devoted to culture, art, and conversation. I also welcome you to AUB's historic Assembly Hall. This incredible edifice surrounding us was built in 1891 to serve as a chapel and as a space for university ceremonies. As AUB became increasingly focused on a secular liberal arts education by the early 20th century, Assembly Hall became not only a place of faith, but a powerful center for culture and acculturation. This venue is the stage for history makers and change agents, from politicians to academics and artists who stood and delivered enduring speeches here and performances that will long live in the memory. Jawaharlal Nehru spoke here in 1960, Noam Chomsky in 2006. Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus the same year, and Nobel laureate for literature Wole Soyinka, the first African to win the award for literature, spoke here last year about history, culture, and revisionism. And of course, this is where Yo-Yo got his own honorary doctorate from AUB. And if you think this is a male preserve alone, think again. It was on this very stage that Ambara Salam doffed her full face veil and addressed a public audience in 1927, the first Lebanese Muslim woman to do so. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome back to Assembly Hall another pioneer, our alumnus, one of the world's greatest musicians on the planet, and certainly its finest cellist, Yo-Yo Ma. As I indicated, he was awarded an honorary doctorate by AUB in 2004, and back then, the audience, and I was fortunate enough to be in that audience, enjoyed his performance of a sarabande from Bach's Cello Suite No. 3 in C major. Yo-Yo Ma explained to all of us that the sarabande was an example of a transnational roots of music, if I'm recalling correctly from the notes, considering how it originated from a dance in North Africa before traveling to Spain, where it was banned, like many things are banned, and then being taken up by the French aristocracy to become a courtly dance, and subsequently to become incorporated by Bach in his cello suites. A year ago, Yo-Yo and his team launched the BACH project, which is a world tour to perform Bach's 6 suites for solo cello in 36 locations across 6 continents. Those of us who had the privilege of being in Byblos yesterday, despite the sweltering heat, and the perhaps unintentionally interactive audience will never forget it. Certainly, Yo-Yo never broke his stride, and he performed a magical performance ending with Mashrou' Layla's Taif as an encore. But the tour is not only about sublime musical performance, as Mona indicated, it's about modeling an example of how culture connects us all over time and space. It highlights the role of culture in society in view of the many challenges the world is currently facing. The Bach project curates at the same locations as these wonderful concerts a series of day-long inclusive activities that engage the community and form a local and global conversation, as well as sheds light on critical cultural statements. Yo-Yo has stated his belief that culture is the way we express ourselves and understand each other, how we discuss, we debate, we describe, whether through music, literature, science, or food. And culture is what can ultimately bind us together as one world. So far, Yo-Yo Ma has performed in 19 different locations, and I believe Lebanon was the 20th, and the first in the Arab world until now. I can say you certainly sparked debate between myself and the rector of Saint-Joseph, who prefers Bach as his favorite, as he believes Bach is man speaking to God. And I indicated that perhaps my favorite was Beethoven, which is man screaming his agony to God, but nonetheless. So you provoked a conversation. But I think this conversation in Beirut and in Lebanon and at AUB could not have been more timely, especially in light of the very recent and unfortunate events concerning our own alumni, the members of the world-renowned band Mashrou' Layla, who have been subjected to vicious attacks and unfair criticism by local religious authorities for what they've expressed through their music. The band was forced to cancel its concert at the Byblos Festival, which was supposed to have taken place I think a couple of weeks ago, and its members have been made to feel ill at ease in their native Lebanon. This is an alarming turn of events, since if you consider the cultural voyage of the Arab world, free speech and freedom of expression are at their nadir in recent years, and never more so than today. So this very alarming turn of events reflects the urgent need to not only address the issue of freedom of expression, which is much larger than us and Mashrou' Layla, maybe not larger than Yo-Yo, but also to find and implement corrective actions locally and regionally, but to do them peacefully. The French-Iranian graphic novelist and director Marjan Satrapi of Persepolis fame described culture and education as the lethal weapons against all kinds of fundamentalism. The lethal weapons against all kinds of fundamentalism. That's what you just saw Nadine Touma and her group so beautifully demonstrate, a lethal weapon against all kinds of fundamentalism and extremism. I believe this is exactly what we are in desperate need of at the moment. Just as this building has evolved from chapel to assembly hall, AUB, founded by Protestant missionaries, has found that impactful and transformative education can best be achieved with a humanist philosophy that respects each and every credo, religious or secular, but it does not insist upon one or another of them. And we understand that we are responsible for modeling an inclusive and liberal society outside our university gates in Lebanon and the wider Arab world. I'd like to thank Yo-Yo Ma and his team for including Lebanon and AUB in this outstanding project. We are honored and grateful for your presence. Beirut has always been a cultural epicenter of the Arab world, with AUB at the pinnacle of that fulcrum. So it's only fitting that change and progressive thought be nurtured here in order to radiate across a region that is now replete with intolerance. I'd like to end by thanking everyone participating in today's event and conversation. Each and every one of you, of our panelists, of our participants, and indeed of our audience and of our choir, reflects an incandescent star in the surprisingly and alarmingly dark sky of the Lebanese and Arab firmament today. But the light is there, and as you just heard from Nadine, it is what connects us. I want to particularly thank Mona Halla, who has worked with Sophie and with Ben to put this extraordinary event together. As I learned a couple of years ago when I put Deans Nadia Al-Sheikh and Iman Nwahid in charge of the easiest decision I ever had to make, the search for the director of our neighborhood relations committee, of our neighborhood initiatives, they said, you really don't need to interview any other candidates. I said, I always interview the other candidates. You know what? I really didn't need to interview any of the other candidates. Muna doesn't do anything halfway, and neither does Yo-Yo, and neither does Nadine. And I hope that the echo of each and every one of your voices, your instruments, and your thoughts today will indeed bring the change that we need to see among us and around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khoury, for this amazing introduction to our evening. I would like now to ask the speakers on the panel to come, and please keep your applause till the end. So I will welcome Dr. George Arbid, architect and director of the Arab Center for Architecture, Layal Sa'er, lawyer and founder of Seats for Legal Initiatives, Omar Abi Azar, theater director and founding member of Zuqaq Theater Company, Nada Sehnawi, artist and political activist and founding member of the Civil Center for National Initiative, Kinan Azmi, our famous clarinist, Maestro Barkev Taslakian, the conductor of the FAYHA choir, who will grace us with their performance after the conversation. Rima Mismar, the executive director of the Arab Fund for Arts and Culture, AFAQ, the great and only Yo-Yo Ma, and Dr. Khoury. Please, can you come on stage? This is not a panel. This is not a panel, it's a conversation. And it's going to flow between the people on stage and some of the curated intervention in the audience. Please, let's all together think of what connects us despite بدون أعراق، بدون ألوان، بدون مستويات مختلفة. خلينا نجمع حالنا بكل فنوننا، بكل الاشياء الحلوه اللي بنعملها، لانه للاسف بعدنا بهالبلد بنعمل الاشياء كل واحد لوحده، بنعملهم بجننوا وعلى مستوى كتير عالي بس كل واحد لوحده. يويو ماهو اليوم عم بيقلنا اشتغلوا مع بعض، لانه الثقافه هي الشيء الوحيد والامل الوحيد لكلنا نطلع بهالبلد من هالمحل الغامق كتير اللي عم نفوت فيه. Yo-Yo Ma is calling upon us to unite our cultural efforts, because we really excel, each and every individual, every one of us is doing a great thing for this country, but we're not doing it together. And unless we do, we're going to fail. Please, Dr. George Arbid, you are to start the moderation.
Okay. Good evening. It's a privilege to moderate this session with these distinguished people. Before I ask you, Yo-Yo-Ma, what you're doing here, because this is my main question, I would like to give a few directions to this debate. This conversation is taking place at a time of disenchantment and disappointment. Around me and in the audience are many dreamers of a better future. They are creators not only of institutions, but creators of hope and inclusivity. Thank you, AUB and Yo-Yo-Ma, for the platform that allows these voices to be heard, even and more importantly, when they are whispers and not the mainstream noise we've been hearing for a while. We are here to lend our support to creative social and cultural actions, each in his own way, in their institutions, have created. You were driven by free thinking and independence, yet independence is not understood here as working alone. And this is precisely what Mona has been saying. It is precisely your free, independent minds that allow you to wholeheartedly join efforts with others. This conversation is the best proof to that. You've been for the most experimenting with off-road culture as a field of experimentation, where boundaries are pushed and overcome. You did not surrender to instrumentalized mainstream culture, producing normal thinking. Together, you are shaping our positive, contemporary, collective memory. When I'm asked about the opposition of modernism and contemporaneity in architecture, which is the field where I operate, I refute the opposition. In architecture, which is a field I'm familiar with, and I argue the same for other cultural production fields, there is no opposition. What we call our tradition is actually a compilation of modernisms and contemporaneities across time. And what I hope from this conversation is to be looking mostly at the future, at what we can do together, rather than lament about what we haven't been able to do successfully. So thank you again for being here. Now, the probably mainstream question is, what are you doing here, Yo-Yo-Ma? And what is the BACH project, please, in your own words?
Well, what am I doing here? I'm here to ask a simple question. What can we do together that we can't do alone? We have so many talented people in this room. And I'm trying to ask this question not only in this room, but in many other rooms, because my other two answers to your question is that I'm trying to find out what people share in common more than what actually divides them. So, as Dr. Quiris has said, this is my 20th, actually 19th place to ask that question out of 6 places. This is an experiment. I'm trying to find out. Bach is what I play. This is what I do. It's the best of what I can do. But I'm hoping to do the following, is to ask not only those 2 questions, what can we do together that we can't do alone, but also what joins us, what are our common concerns that we could actually work on together. But the last part is, actually, I think it brings us to AUB, because not only am I asking this question about cultures, different places around the world, but also about different disciplines within a university. You know, when I feel like the same connections can be made between the different frames of thinking. as well as between different societies. And I will report back after 36 places, but this is really around the midpoint, and I'm fascinated to hear what people have to say and what people feel that what we can actually, how we can connect better through culture, through our work, and through conversation.
Thank you. I would like to start with a question to Rima Mismar about AFAQ, the Arab Fund for Arts and Culture, because you've been exposed to a wide variety of proposals in Lebanon and the Arab world. So you've been supporting creative and daring projects aiming at pushing boundaries and fostering change. I would like to ask, how can you objectively measure the success of what you've been doing? And what is the change that you're looking for in our societies through art and culture? What is it?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation to AUB, Muna, and my colleagues on the panel. It's an honor to be with you and to have the discussion. I think the term success is sometimes congested because what we do as an organization is actually facilitating and playing the role of a catalyst when it comes to the production of arts and culture and creative expression. And probably this needs a bit of contextualizing in the sense that most of the civil society organizations across the Arab region are actually working beyond their main mandates and roles to fill a huge gap where the public sector is not being involved in producing culture and supporting culture and supporting the access to culture, which is also a big hindrance today. So for me, the success is more about how to support the trajectories of artists, of writers, of researchers, of intellectuals, and trying to find their voices, their uniqueness, to fulfill their creative ideas, and how to do this with the utmost freedom and liberty. So it's basically supporting their endeavors and trying to express or experiment with their tools, with their ideas, regardless of what the end result is. Because this is something that is always open to question. Art is not meant to bring people all together to all agree on a piece being good or not. It's more actually to spur critical thinking. It's more to open a discussion, a debate, a dialogue. This is what art has to offer to the society, and to expand the space for civic engagement, because this is where everyone, each player in the civic sphere would actually bring in their contributions. One thing that I think is also important when it comes to how we imagine that arts and culture contributes, we have to be aware that we're always starting from a place which is probably under zero, which is being put in a place where we have to justify the importance of art and why it matters. And this is what brings us often to discourses that go along the lines of art is disconnected from society, art is a sphere that exists on its own. How does it help progress, social progression? And at the end of the day, I think that art in itself is political. When an artist, especially in our region, where there is a very difficult road for those artists to actually to do what they do, I don't think that the outcome or the thing that they're looking for is fame or even financial reward. It's more expressing their concerns that are related definitely to the social, political, and economic spheres.
Thank you. I would like to hear Omar and Zokak Theater on the issue of art therapy, drama therapy. And I mean, your work is tied to the theater of the oppressed, and you really believe that change is possible And I read somewhere, Junaid Saridin saying that he's here, hello? He said something that actually I thought was extremely interesting about this cultural work you do, which is that in your actions, you're also looking for your own survival. You're looking for your own survival. It is about being able to survive in this place. It's not only about producing a work that will allow people who need support to have it. It's also about your own mindset. In other words, you need to create, you need to be producing for your own survival. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, of course. Actually, what Junaid meant in those words is we are trying to do what Yoyoma, Kinan, and Umayma managed to do in very few minutes today at Beit Beirut. I'm not a huge fan of music, and I went there because I'm invited to the panel, and I actually, it's my childhood neighborhood. I lived on Monroe Street when Monroe Street was completely destroyed. There was only our building standing. Now there is a Chinese restaurant in it. So at a certain point, I was looking like that, okay, music, and I started to have goosebumps, and I almost felt like crying. I used to play hide and seek in that building, and I noticed that when I say what you managed to do and what we are trying to do in our theater company and with the participant to the workshop of drama therapy, it's in a kind of way time and space to mourn our death. This time that we didn't have, that we are not allowed to, due to amnesty law, due to crisis situation. Culture is able to create time and space to mourn, not to heal the wound, because I don't believe in healing the wound. We don't believe in therapy, actually, but to understand that those wounds are wounds, and they are not like, I forget to look at the bullets in my own neighborhood, and I forgot that those are actually bullets. Some of them are from executing people. So we use theater to create narrative that give times and space to mourn, to caress the wound, to understand that a wound is a wound. And so thank you for this performance today, because I forgot that the street was completely destroyed. I forgot that this was a demarcation line. I forgot that people died. Thousands of people died crossing that line. I forgot that there is the 17,000 disappeared, even though there is a campaign every day that reminds me that there is 17,000 disappeared. But I tend to forget that I live in this kind of city. And I tend to forget.
Tears, and they just didn't stop. And my son came and said, "What's wrong with you, Mama?" I said, "This was a dream that somebody like you connects us with our city on the demarcation line that disconnected us for 15 years in the building that just was that far from just being another rubble for another modern building, for another useless, soulless building that could have taken our identity and our memory away." So what you did today is really, other than proving that culture really connects, that people like you really care. And you're connecting us not only to each other, but to you and hopefully to others in the universe out there. And you took time to take me, to show me to your photographer, to say he is coming later to connect you to other people who are doing the same thing in other countries. So this is what we need. We need genuine people who really want us to move forward, who really want us to be stronger together, not who are fighting so that each one is strong in his own category, taking everybody's chance away. So thank you for doing this today. I just wanted to follow up on Omar's I just wanted to ask the Samandal people who are with us today. So we have Tracy Shahwan and we have Noor Hifawi, and you are I think you are the youngest who are with us today. So if I ask you, what do you think Samandal has been doing. We know that Samandal has been doing a lot. First, you are volunteer-based, and then you are the young generation who took from the older Samandal founders. And you have continued to infuse comics into the public sphere and into the public scene. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Okay. So basically, one of the key elements has been translation. All of the latest anthologies.
It's better if you stand up so that others can see you. Yeah.
Okay, hi. So one of the key elements in Samandal has been translation. Most of our anthologies are translated to Arabic, French, and English. And so we've been collaborating with our new publication. Sorry, I'm bad at public speaking. And our new publication, we have collaborated with artists coming from cinema, from theater, from music. We talked to them for them to write scripts for comics. So we're very happy about this. And this year we're also launching our Open Call magazine again. And I'm very happy to say that more than 40 artists have sent comics from all over the world. We have comics from Palestine, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Peru, from France, and many more countries. And we also like to organize a lot of events for free, like live drawings and workshops. We have workshops with people from all over the country that are coming. And we have a book launch soon, so Noor will be talking about that.
Hi. So also our main, really as comic artists in Lebanon and in the Middle East, our main struggle is distribution, since there's no distributors and there's very few publishing houses. So to distribute our books, we either take them ourselves, or we even sometimes ask our friends to take them. Unfortunately, we only distribute in Lebanon, and we're even banned in few Arab countries, like in Jordan. So to be able to take them to Jordan, we have to take them ourselves to Jordan, so without passing through shipping. And we also distribute in Europe and very few in US. So we're trying to really work on making our voice be heard outside of Lebanon. And we've published so far this year, and we're trying to, we were lawsuit, we were filed in 2009 with a lawsuit, and about freedom of expression, and we've been trying so far to make our voice be heard even louder and being more active. We're going to festivals in many different countries, and we're publishing more and more. We published so far almost 4 comics this year, and there's also another 4 coming out. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Noor and Tracy. Just to go the full circle to the beginnings where we heard about comics in Lebanon, George Khouri, known as Jad. I remember when I was a little girl and I went to the Goethe Institute, and there was something called Jad Workshop, an exhibition, and it was all comics. And I discovered that comics are not only Lulu and Tabush that I used to know. And Jad is with us today, and I'd like to ask you you're looking at the new generation producing comics, and you're seeing where this country is going in all that, because you're an ex-journalist too, and you also teach at LAU, so you're in contact with the new generation, and I know how much you love this country, and I would like to hear your take on what we're saying today.
Okay. I started comics during the war, and I will try to make like a sort of similarities between the war and after the war. During the war, we needed just a political or ideological clearance, and then we can say whatever we want. And it depends in which sector we are. I used to be in Ras Beirut, so once I'm cleared politically or ideologically from the, I don't know, the Palestinian or the Syrian authorities or whatever, etc. So I really, really can say whatever I want to say. And I never felt that there is a sort of oppression to what I want to say socially or whatever, etc. Nowadays, what I find is that we need nowadays like a religious clearance to be able to say what we want to say. Some might think that I'm insinuating that religious institutions like the Catholic Church, the Dar Fatwa, the Majlis Islami, etc., are replacing the militias and the authorities that were at the time of the war. It's not an insinuation, it's an accusation. And I think they are. The other thing that I want to talk about is that I'm privileged to travel through the Arab world, being member of juries related to comics and animation. And one thing is striking is that this new generation that mostly started this whole Arab Spring started, and here the point that I want to mention to Yo-Yoma, started as collectives. From Casablanca to Tunisia, to Cairo, to Baghdad, to Palestine, to Syria even, here, Samandal, they all started as collectives, and these collectives were interconnected to each other to create this modern movement of Arabic comics. They are persecuted, especially in the Arab world where dictatorship is coming back, etc. They are running away, they are put in jail, whatever. But none of them stopped producing. And not only they didn't stop producing, others are stepping in and producing. And that's the sample of Samandal. They are at their 4th generation of artists coming, stepping in, and carrying the flag, etc. And for me, this is really, really a sign of hope, and at the same time, an admiration to these young who refuse to say no, who refuse to give up. It's like a wave coming, and the strong of the wave, but at the same time, they have the hope of a breeze of air that will englobe the whole Arab world, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jad. Thank you very much. This brings me to Layal, who precisely works with seeds about legal issues and about censorship and how to fight that. Your association works in the field of cultural rights. You promote legal knowledge and you support actions in favor of fighting limitations. We've been witnessing quasi-inquisitions lately across the belief spectrum, whether through violence or intimidation, that leads to self-censorship. I'd like to ask you, what are the positive actions that you are leading to operate a change in that direction?
First of all, thank you for inviting me here. Thank you, Mona, for bringing me here. What I really want to say is that we are promoting in Seeds legal awareness and legal knowledge and access to justice. We believe that we have a perfect constitution that protects the whole liberties in Lebanon, liberty of expression, assembly, and association. So what we are currently doing is fighting for those liberties by pushing to have legislative reform in the penal code and in many fields. And we are not hearing. Okay. So this is what we are currently doing, promoting those liberties and fighting for them and trying to implement our constitution by doing a lot of cases to promote those liberties. And we are trying to fight censorship by highlighting our freedoms in our constitution and by doing a lot of recourses against a lot of decisions that put restrictions and limitations to the freedoms in Lebanon. So basically, this is what we are doing because we believe that the law and the justice should be accessible to all. So we do legal awareness, legal advice, and legal representation. And we do a lot of advocacy for the legislative reforms that we need in the censorship and in the penal code and all the Lebanese law that they are very old now. So this is mainly what we do.
Okay, I had a question for Joelle, who's not here, but I will still say what I wanted to say about what she has been doing with the legal agenda, المفكرة القانونية, which is something that is very close to what you do. I do remember very well when an enlightened cultural minister of culture, Tariq Mitri, was supportive of a play that was named How Nancy Wished It Was a Fool's April. And then the minister stood with the play, which is usually uncommon. He didn't stand with censorship of that play. He considered there was nothing wrong with it, and he considered it was pushing precisely the boundaries. And for those who do not know about it, it was precisely about the facts of the previous time about the war. And his argument was an excellent one. He claimed, for the right reasons, that the myth that each of us is having in their own mind about what happened in the war can only be countered by facts. And the play was about facts. It wasn't about speculation. And our law says, basically, that anything you say that might be interpreted as an insult or might be interpreted as something that triggers hatred and so on should be banned. But everyday political talk is doing that. And art form is subjected to censorship, whereas politicians go along with their talk. So I would like here to ask Nada, who is actually working upstream. We're talking today about cultural freedom and censorship as well. But Nada has a take on it that is upstream, that starts at the cradle. So please tell us about your political theory about that.
شكرا جورج مساء الخير. Before I say what I want to say, often we are asked if art is a luxury, especially in a country like Lebanon. We are perhaps on the verge of financial collapse, corruption, pollution. Is art a luxury? And the answer is Lebanon suffers from fragmentation. And fragmentation has created all sorts of ailments. And art can create a sort of identity, a collective identity, an inclusive identity, and perhaps takes us away from fragmentation and communitarism and tribalism. And tonight, thank you, Mona, thank you, Ayubi, we rally to protect and safeguard freedom of expression. And that is the right thing to do, and that is what we will keep doing. But in order to do so wholly and structurally, not just episodically, we need to examine the origin of these totalitarian practices in Lebanon. What is the origin? For that, we need to remember what happens when a baby is born in Lebanon to Lebanese parents, or more precisely, to a Lebanese father, as Lebanese mothers are still not allowed to pass on their nationality to their children. With a birth certificate in hand, the father, it's usually the father, requests a Lebanese ID for his newborn. This request is answered by the administration in the form of an official paper. We all know about the Ikhraj aid that we all have as Lebanese citizens. In this إخراج aid, where in addition to the general information like the date of birth, the name, the surname, and other information, there is the mention of the affiliation of the newborn to a religious community, the religious community of his or her father. This administrative practice deprives the newborn and all of us as it carries on for all our lives through personal status laws and confessional political representation from the basic freedom of choice, which is a basic human right. It is the origin and the source of the abusive behavior that we have witnessed lately. It is the practice that allows tyrannical mindset to feel entitled to such behavior, as who can the most, can the least. This administrative practice is not backed by the Constitution or by any law. On the contrary, it is utterly illegal. Lebanon not only participated in the writing of the Charter of Human Rights, it has also included it in the introduction of its constitution. To truly champion freedom of expression, we need and we can address that practice and rally to make it obsolete, as freedom of expression cannot be fragmented.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to amplify on what Nada said, because it actually wasn't Lebanon who helped write the Charter on Human Rights. It was AUB. We actually had more graduates from AUB, and they were Lebanese, Jordanian, Palestinian, from all over the region. But you bring up a very poignant idea, which is that here you're sort of branded like a young calf for life with your religion, your sect. I remember in my more rebellious days, I used to threaten my father, just to frustrate you, I'm going to convert to Catholicism and revert the Protestant Reformation of your family. And he said, go ahead and try. I can't even move my nufuz from Alay to Ras Beirut so I can vote. Good luck with that. Whereas in America, I've been threatening my wife and children because of my love for Woody Guthrie. I'm going to change my name to Woody. I'm 56. I'm sick of Fadlo, and they actually have reason to fear. You can change everything in America. The point, though, is a salient one, and I just want to go back to the power of art and of culture. In fact, as you indicated, and sorry, no, this is correct, it was AUB more than any other university that helped lead the UN Charter on Human Rights. We had by far more graduates than any other university, and this is a universally accepted charter that Lebanon is signatory to. And yet these human rights are consecrated in the Lebanese constitution, but they're ignored in a mythical pact called Al-Mithaq, which 1 year and 1 month ago we called, more or less, I wouldn't say very subtly, George, for its abolishment when we edited An-Nahar's issue. Because this idea of defining people by their gender, their sexuality, their religion is meaningless in the world. And this, I think, is the fundamental crux of the argument, and something that art and music can decanonize and also make, as Molière used to, make lighter, make more debatable, and maybe reduce the antagonism that exists when you bring up these subjects.
Kinan, I'm always interested in the way Lebanon and Syria, my husband is Syrian. I know Syria more than him because I used to go every week. And I'm interested, every time somebody tells me, look what's happening in Syria, I'm like, I want the Syrians to learn from our experience, not to let their country post-construction, post-war, reconstruction, not to let it destroy their country more than what the war did to their country. And this is very important because our culture has suffered maybe after the war more than during the war. We thrived during the war. We had cafes and we have people writing, and we had less censorship during the war than after the war. Not to talk about heritage preservation, not to talk about how our construction has completely, both our natural and our built-on environment has totally been abused after the war, much more than the war. So when you come to I know that you live in the United States now. When you come to Lebanon and you see a post-war Lebanon, how do you see the cultural interaction between the Syrian, because we have lots of Syrian artists and cultural activists and in NGOs. Now we'll talk to also Ziad from Sawa. We have 1.5 million refugees that we're taking in with our hearts, and we're trying to integrate the host communities and the refugees, and at the same time, we're making use of the presence of your cultural elite, of your cultural young generation here. So when you come here, how do you see this in music and otherwise? What does it mean to you that you're like 200 kilometers from your home country, and I don't think you visit, but at the same time, culturally, you are connecting with it every single day?
Thank you, Muna. Well, my wife is Lebanese, so I'm being trained to know Lebanon more than she does. But I feel very much at home every time I come to Beirut. I've played in this room plenty of times, so it is like a homecoming for me. Your question is actually there are lots to cover there. But if I have to narrow it down, these things will be the artist, that's one fold. The other fold is identity. I guess, I'm not saying anything new. The word has been mentioned a few times in this panel. Making art is an act of freedom by itself. And there's lots of courage that's come to that. And I salute all the artists, whether Lebanese or Syrians, who are, interacting, doing what they do best. Of course, when we talk about art making, I think we're talking about also several levels. There's the creative process, where you're writing a piece. And I think in that stage, you have the utmost freedom, because that's the only thing that is activated is your brain. And maybe it's the school, maybe it's the family, it's the surrounding that you have that gives you that spark, where they tell you you are born free, if you want. And that creative process has to be free all the time, no matter what the circumstances is. The implementation of what you create, that's what usually is censored. Public performances, publishing books, plays. As somebody who studied classical music, instrumental classical music that is, I always had the luxury of being free, because my music cannot be interpreted by nobody. Or actually, the opposite, so it can be interpreted in a million different ways. So I never felt, that I cannot play this note or that note on the clarinet. Nobody cared about the clarinet altogether anyway. No, but the thing is, the most dangerous, I think, of censorship that we're talking about is when you self-censor. This is when you predict that this piece will not be liked by somebody. And I think that's where you end up lowering what you do to the lowest common denominator. And that's very dangerous, I think, collectively. And back to the whole idea of the Syrian and the Lebanese, I think what happened after the uprising in Syria in 2011, suddenly there's a art switch from me, but also I think for many people, from being a luxury to being a necessity. It became for many, many people the only way they can express what they would like to express, because of the lack of the political platform to do so. And in that case, the Lebanese and the Syrian artists who are actually working here, I think they are way beyond now the labeling of Lebanese and Syrian anymore. On that notion, which is about identity, I would like to bring a wonderful conversation I had with Yo-Yo a few years ago about identity. What does it mean? he asked me, I don't know if you remember this, Yo-Yo, but it was quite wonderful. He said, Kinan, if you have to present yourself, what do you say? There's a mosquito that is, sorry. He said, how do you describe yourself? And I said, I'm a Syrian musician. He said, if we start from the beginning, what are you? And I started thinking, when I was young, I was the young clarinetist from Damascus. I grew a little bit older, I became the clarinetist from Damascus. I was no longer young. Later on, I started to compose, so I became the musician from Damascus. I started to travel internationally a little bit, so I became the Syrian musician. And then what I think the next stage, actually in this identity pyramid, is to become the musician. It doesn't mean that you're actually getting rid of your identity. I think the opposite is true. You're accumulating more and more identities. And then Yo-Yo said, he said, I think there is one more step to that. I said, what is it? He said, you can become a human after this. That even what you do doesn't matter, but it's what you do with it. And I think now, looking at the interaction closely between the Syrian and the Lebanese musicians, and Beirut has been an incredible space for a pan-Arab collaboration, really. I think artists are working together, like not even thinking what the background is. And back to your beginning of the question is, today when I was playing in Beit Beirut, I could not think, but how would it make me, it would make me feel, hopefully soon, if I play the same pieces with the same wonderful musicians in Aleppo, Daraa, Deir ez-Zor, you know.
Amanda. Can we give a microphone to Amanda? Because I would like you to answer about this, because Kenan mentioned the issue of identity. He started by speaking about his own trajectory. So my question is, where is this connection between what we do as creators and what is meaningful to others? And I ask you about this because you've been working on this issue as a curator, producing work with artists, mainly in the public sphere, in public space. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell us about that?
I would like to put maybe the identity question aside to talk about something a bit more critical. We are all gathered here because we share the same commitment, but we probably belong to the same appartenance, like we share the same cultural capital. And I'm really interested in how contemporary art, which is that thing that no one really understands or is like very sensitive around, can be mediated across social classes, across centers. I founded this organization called Temporary Art Platform, and we work with contemporary artists outside the expected spaces for the diffusion of such works. So not in art spaces, not in museums, but we invite artists and commission them to do site-specific interventions. The last one was at the National Museum of Beirut, for instance, which is a beautiful museum that people who probably do not share the same social class don't really enter. So we really work on these, I call them like symbolic violences that are obstacles from getting people close to contemporary art specifically. In terms of identity, I mean, I don't really work with it. It's not even a thing. I mean, every time we do an open call, it doesn't matter where the artists are from, the languages they speak. It's important to see how they can mediate what they do in a locale or something. I mean, we've been doing these residencies outside of Beirut in rural areas where it didn't really matter if, we belong to the same community. Artists residing in Beirut go to Ras Masa, for instance, which is that neighborhood of Tripoli, and they really feel that they're somewhere else, like not even in their own country. So how can we create these shared spaces to create commons? One thing I would like to maybe talk about is that, just to follow up on this cultural policy and legal advice, is that Tool Guide we've been working on to understand the administrative and legal challenges that artists face when they want to work in public spaces. Because one of the ways we think we can get contemporary art close to people and create a cohesion through art is to really like invest these spaces and understand what social space mean, and how from the different positions where we stand, we kind of define these spaces and interact with them. So this is a tool guide that is online that everyone can download. It's called A Few Things You Need to Know When Creating a Public Artwork in Lebanon. So, it was done with an advice of a lawyer. It was like a 3-year research project, and that's what we do at Temporary Art Platform. And the last project we did was, of course, with AUB for the new hospital, like how to look at this hospital and the audiences, patients, and connect with their subjectivities and their position as, you know, health patients. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Amanda. We have with us also Ziad Hakim from Hilm.
From
Sawa
for Development and Aid.
From Sawa for Development and Aid. We were talking with Kinan, and I want to follow up with you. You're a youth development organization that works with the Syrian refugees, but also with the host communities.
True.
So, and usually you use alternative education, and you concentrate on livelihoods and protection to integrate both the refugees and the host community and support them to live a decent life and to express themselves sometimes through art. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
And thank you, Mona. I'm just to follow up on what Kinan said. I'd like to give our own perspective, just an idea about the identity. But first, let me answer your request a little bit to talk about Sawa. Sawa is a grassroots organization. We are a local NGO. So we work basically with communities. We try to help them foster, self-organize, and we try to encourage them to secure their dignity in a way of sustainability through 3 main pillars. The first one is education, mainly alternative education. The second one is livelihoods. So we have a lot of programs from vocational trainings, technical trainings, and the third pillar is protection. Protection is mainstreamed to the other pillars. So we do a lot of psychosocial support, gender-based violence mitigation, a lot of child protection. And then for the past 8 years, we've been following up all the needs on the fields, working with the Syrian community, basically. And we've been always trying to involve the host community in our programs. And then for the past couple of years, we've been enhancing a lot of programs based on the needs which are related to culture. And this is where we've launched a lot of programs. One of them is Harmony. It involves music, visual arts, and sports. It provides the individuals to express themselves and gives them well-being, some hope perspectives. Another program is the Masterpiece. It's a ready-to-wear line, and I'd like to thank Yo-Yo-Ma yesterday for wearing one of our blouses during the concert yesterday night. Well, yes, we've started including a lot of cultural work and programs based on the needs that we are measuring on the ground. Why so? Because actually we're feeling that from one side, economics is stagnating, politics is not doing any major change, any positive change. So we feel that culture is the last resort for us to try to break through a little bit and give some hope. And I'm gonna just get back to what Kinan was saying in terms of identity and our work. Actually, it's important to know your identity. That's true. But from the other perspective, does it really matter? It's important, yes, to know your identity, but I think from the human perspective that Yo-Yo-Ma is working on, actually, it is important as well to create one perspective that could lead us to a more tolerant world. So if I'm gonna try to answer the simple question that Yo-Yo-Ma asked, what can we do together that we can't do alone? I will say, just let us live together. Tolerance. Tolerance could be one of the alternatives for us to sustain our lives. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Ziad.
Perhaps we can move to Barkev and Al-FAYHA with the work that you do as well with Syrian and Lebanese.
Yes.
And I recently was with somebody who sings. I mean, I live in the Shuf now, and somebody was very happy to see that there is a FAYHA choir in Ba'alin now. So you've been disseminating your work all over.
Yes,
And can you tell us more about this idea of moving from Tripoli to other places?
We started before 17 years in Tripoli in 2003 at the beginning in January. And now we are spreading. It became not FAYHA Choir Network, we are trying to call it. We are trying to build our choral network in the Arab world. The second branch was built in Beirut with the Maqasid, with the help of Maqasid Association, Islamic Association. Before 4 years, then before 2 years, a branch in Cairo, and like 7 months ago in Ba'alin with the municipality of Ba'alin. Our choir has 17 religious. Unfortunately, we don't have Jews. We hope someday we will have some Jews in our choir too, because Lebanon are the 18 religions. But we believe sometimes we come together and talk to each other and let's make agreements and love each other. I think most of the time we don't agree. Sometimes we do. But when we sing together, without talking, all the times, every time is working. Every time when you do something together and succeed something, sorry for my English, I'm not educated enough, but I will try to express myself. When you sing together, I think it's working all the time. This is the power of music. Even we have social projects working with the Palestinian. We started to work in the Palestinian camps with the refugees, let children and youth singing, and with singing, let them work as a team, teach them how to be a team working. And then we started to work with the Syrian refugees and why not in the national Lebanese schools. Now we have even projects in all over Europe with the Erasmus Plus, funded by European Union. A project, it's called Sing Me In. We are not Europeans, but we have the experience, and we got the Music Rights Award before 3 years from the IMC. And we are working now in Europe to teach them how to work with refugees, because we have, I think, 13 years experience in this. And not only this is our target, like Kinan said, to be a human, you should have your own identity. I believe in that. If you are not proud, I am proud to be a Lebanese, I am proud to be an Armenian, I am proud to be a man. This way I think I can be a human. And in our choir, we talk about religious also. Why not? We talk about everything, but we don't fight. We learn from each other. And we have another target to create, you know, the Arabic music is based on one voice, monodic. We are trying to develop the Arabic music, not to change it, to develop it. It's very important. To not westernize this. We have done a lot of songs, more than 100 songs, I think, and to keep it, to spread it in all over the world, to give the good image of our world, the Arabic world, because, you know, these days when you say an Arab, it means terrorist sometimes, especially for the Westerners. We are trying to change this thing. Even with the music, I think we are doing a revolution because our government doesn't help the culture, because they don't know about culture, because they haven't sang in the school, they haven't played music in the schools. We are trying to change this because the people that are singing in the choir, they will be governors someday, and they will change our country someday. We believe in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's give.
Our last intervention will be with Fadi Tufaili. Fadi is a writer, and I know that you have something to say about being able to write. Also, you're a journalist. And what do you think, what's in the back of your mind when you know that you're going to be censored some one way or another, or there's freedom of expression is not really guaranteed? How does it work?
Yeah, I think it's the responsibility of individuals to make the freedom of expression stronger and to reach people. And because I think censorship exists in all institutions. Like every institution has its way of censoring the productions, what people are producing. If you are working in a newspaper or in a television station or in a university or in any institution, there is a way of censoring the production. So to be able to break this oppressive atmosphere, we need to be stronger as individuals and to try to produce material that is related to ourselves and to express ourselves in it. And because this problem is really old, I don't see that it's a new problem. Like all the time we had censorship on writing or on music or on art. And in the case of Lebanon, this was happening also in the 60s during the what we call the golden age of the country. The censorship was happening, but what made the difference was the power of individuals and people who are working in the art scene or in the cultural scene, who were trying to produce outside this atmosphere of power. So yeah, it depends on our will and our ability to keep on doing ourselves what we like to do.
Thank you, Fadi.
Thank you, Fadi. Perhaps we can, bravo, thank you. We move to you, Hanan, precisely because, maybe this is the last intervention, but precisely because we all know that you have a play that has been stopped for 3 years now, waiting for permission. So trying to work outside the mainstream, outside the expected box, doesn't go without trouble. So perhaps you can tell us about it.
I promised Mona to talk in English, but since it's the last intervention and I have only 2 minutes, I will talk in Arabic, and I promise Shoyuma to send you an email about what I'm saying, and maybe Mona will translate it to you. So sorry for that. بدي بلش أقول إنه بيروت مزبوط مثل ما قال كنان هي واحة للحريات، واحد بلاقي حاله متداخل مع الكتير فنون وكوميونيتيز بحس حاله حر، والفن هو act of freedom. بس في بيروت قبل منع مشروع ليلى، وفي بيروت ما بعد منع مشروع ليلى. وما بفهم ليش ليش كلنا وقت اللي صارت قصة شو اسمه المحل اللي قلت لك فجروه، ليش كلنا وقت ما فجروا في شارلي ابدو، ليش كل اللبنانية وكل الإعلام وكلنا صرنا نقول وي ار شارلي ابدو، وما كلنا قلنا وي ار سمندل وقت قاموا ليهم ودفعون $20,000، وليش كلنا ما قلنا وي ار زياد عيتاني خاصة بعد ما أثبتوا حريته، وليش ما كلنا قلنا وي ار مشروع ليلى. بدي أقول إنه الفن، أنا اكتشفت المسرح من خلال الحرب. Thanks to the war. This could be paradoxically, بس لما كنا نجتمع بشلتر مدة 10 أيام والقصف مستمر، كان في موسيقية وكان في ناس بيحكوا شعر، يبلشوا يرتجلوا، وشوي شوي يتحول هالمكان لشيء سحري، لشيء يضمنا كلنا سوا بالرغم من فروقاتنا. وهيك قررت بالوقت اللي كنت عم بدرس بيولوجي وعم بدرس جينيتيك انه صير انا فنانة مسرح، لاقول الانسبوكن، لعبر عن الشيء اللي أنا فطرياً بعبر عنه. الله جميل يحب الجمال، وما في أجمل بهالدنيا من الفن والموسيقى والثقافة وكل هالاشياء. أنا بكل ما أوتيت من إيمان، أنا إنسانة ملتزمة، بقول إنه أنا ضد اللي صار مع مشروع ليلى ومع حرية التعبير اللي هي بالقانون بالدستور. وإذا نحن كنا من المجتمع المدني أو من المؤمنين وبنحكي عن وصايا، كانت الوصايا العشر أو مش وصايا عشر، ما فينا نحن لا تسرق لا تزني، ما فينا نكون مع السارق وعم يسرقوا لنا حقوقنا، ما فينا نكون مع القاتل وعم يقتلونا كل يوم جسديا ومعنويا وماديا. هالانسبوكن، هالقصص اللي مسكوت عنها، أنا بحكي عنها بمسرحيتي بالجوجينج، وبقول إنه أنا I'm tackling the Bermuda Triangle of taboos اللي هن البوليتيك والسكس والريليجن. إذا ما بدنا نحكي عنهم عن شو بدنا نحكي دخلكم؟ فبس لأقول لا أخلص، لأنه بس عندي كتير إشياء أقولها، بس لأقول إنه هالمسرحية أنا بال2015 قررت إنه ما بقى بدي أكون مهانة، قررت إنه بدي أكون حرة مثل ما حضرتكم تفضلتوا، وقررت أعمل هالمسرحية بدون ما أقدم على الرقابة. إذا قدمتها أكيد ما راح يقبلوا بهيك مسرحية، بس أنا قلت حتى إذا قبلوها أنا ما بدي أقدمها، وأخذت هالتشالنج، والحقيقة في مؤسسات ساعدتني فيها مثل أفاك وغيرها. بس قلت إذا سجنوني مثل ما قالوا بالعادة يعملوا، بعمل مسرحية مع النسوان بالسجن I've been dreaming about it. وصار لي من 2017 صرت عاملة أكثر من 100 عرض بكل لبنان بدون فيزا أوف سنسورشيب، وهيدا حقي وما رح أتخلى عنه، وهيدا الفن اللي أنا بيعطيني الحق والله بيعطيني الحق. بدي لحق ترجم لها. Thank you, Hanan. Yo, in a very quickly, but Hanan has been doing this a play without a visa of censorship for the past 3 years, going around and talking about taboos, you know, like religion and sex everywhere. And she's a very conservative person. You can see that it's her right, because it has nothing to do with her veil, what she thinks and what she expresses. And she said that if they put me in prison, it's okay, I'll do a play with the woman in prison, because that's something I've been dreaming about for a long time. So we salute Hanan, and we will have Hanan in John Dark Street very soon, so wait for that. Yo-Yo, you want to say something, and I hope you're going to play something.
Yes. I would like to make a musical response to what you said, but before I do that, would you allow me to ask Dr. Khoury one question?
Please.
If it's okay, because I understand that you are an oncologist, which is a cancer doctor. And so one of the things I would like to ask you is, in order for the body to be healthy, right, we depend on a balance of a number of things, which we call homeostasis. And so in treating cancer and looking at society, can you make a comparison between what happens with a living form and what determines health, and how, whether you see any connection between immune systems and, you know, benign tumors or malignant tumors in people and what happens in society?
So this will be clumsy and off the top of the cuff, but we'll give it a shot. Homeostasis was a concept defined by Claude Bernard, and it basically means that the body tries to move towards a state of moderation in all things, to be at peace with itself, so to speak. And you picked up on the point, Yo-Yo, that the immune system is a key part of it. And whether we like it or not, the immune system is part of the censorship, right? So the immune system in a cancer will treat the cancer, which was, in theory, a foreign entity, right? It's grown, it's an abnormal growth. After a while, you get immune tolerance. And that's somewhat like society, and it's the crux of one of the things we're talking about is, after a while with censorship, as you were just saying, we become tolerant to it. But it's not all about censorship. There are so many factors in the health of a society. Openness, creativity, and we've seen, sadly, and going back to my preference for Beethoven, that sometimes great art and great creativity, as Muna was referencing, comes in times of struggle, comes in time of great duress. Perhaps the work of Samandal would be easier but less creative if you didn't have so many obstacles. I'm not recommending censorship for you, but there is something right now about the turbulence in Beirut and in the Arab world, and I've now been to a dozen Arab countries since I've come back, hence the Woody analogy, and there is something bubbling there. There is this perturbance, this deviation from homeostasis, which eventually we do want to go back to homeostasis. We want to go to a healthy society. But man as a fallen angel is imperfect, and that homeostasis is like the perfection that the artist craves for, looks for, that evenness, that perfect pitch that you achieved yesterday. Just beyond, but always, always infinitely the goal. And that's how the human body that is assaulted by cancer can be brought back.
So, because it seems to me as a verbal response, and I will like to play something in 1 minute, which is, it seems that societies as well as humans actually are constantly evolving. But we want to always evolve towards a state of homeostasis, towards something where everything is fine. People feel good and healthy. Evolution, creativity is always, doesn't ever go very smoothly. So as much as we are, I think perhaps one way of putting this is we're obviously struggling with a lot of issues. And in fact, believe it or not, it's not as traumatic as the war has been, and it is so traumatic. There are places in the world that also have gone through this kind of trauma, and the world is kind of in an unsteady place right now. So I think there is value possibly in going deep here, but also at the same time acknowledging what else, like look at Colombia and Medellin, you know, that is such a traumatic place, and people are trying to figure it out. And can we mutually figure out, either finding out what other places are doing in order for you to help them, or vice versa. Or it's like science. You find there's a good way of figuring one way of treatment, and you want to try that. There are solutions that are waiting, and I refuse not to be hopeful because the alternative is too depressing. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
So this is a musical response to what you were saying before.
conversation. What an honor. Yo-Yo Ma has played Taif by Mashrou Layla. What could have closed this conversation in a more meaningful way? We invite the FAYHA choir, our guests for this evening, for the beautiful concert that they're gonna play. And we tell you, do not leave, because what's coming is even better, and Yo-Yo hasn't left yet. That's Maestro, the stage is yours.
BACH branch is the first time walking on.
This is the first for them. And we have a surprise. Now the first song will be for Marcel Khalife, لبسوا الكفاف ومشوا, arranged by Edouard Torigian. Soloist Rula Abu Bakr.
The next song was Zaki Nasir, arranged by Eduardo again. If you realize, we are using the magnets with polyphony, with harmony. This is a mystical moment because we take a lot of time with Eduardo again to arrange the Arabic magnets. Hello.
We've been waiting for this moment for a long time because we weren't sure, but now we are sure. Is going to perform with the FAYHA choir a song by Marcel Khalife Asfour. And Kinan Lazmi, of course.
We rehearse. This is the first time. It's rehearsal now, I think.
Thank you.
We got the permission from him, and we will sing it now. We changed it to classical. And this is the, not the last before last song.
Oh
thank you so much. Thank you for the organizers of AUB because they gave us this opportunity to sing with you, and with Kina. Kina is my friend, but this is the first time we play music together. Thank you.